Have a seat, today's tea is bitter, but still sweeter than the price the villain in this story is about to pay. May's red ledger has just turned to a new page. Are you ready to claim justice with Reddit Revenge Tales? I thought I'd buried the real reason deep enough. Then my husband found the condoms a UTI test, and a receipt for a birth control implant in my nightstand. Then, my screen lit up. Kevin, have you ever ended a marriage with one calm sentence and realized you just set off a bomb? 6 days ago, we signed the papers clean, civil 50-50, and I convinced myself I'd gotten away with a quiet exit. I was wrong. I am Rachel. I work as an internal corporate accountant at a large company, the kind of job where you keep your voice steady, even when your stomach is flipping. We live in a quiet suburb outside a big city in a house that looks like stability from the street. Louis is a Michelin restaurant manager. His world runs on late nights weekend service, and a phone that never really stops buzzing. Mine runs on calendars, spreadsheets, and making sure the bills get paid on time. We have been married 20 years. No kids. That sounds simple to people, but it can make the silence louder, like there is nowhere for the love to hide. Louis and I were good on paper. 2 incomes, a shared home, a routine. What we were not good at was staying close when life got busy, and we started living beside each other instead of with each other. After Louis found those items in our bedroom, I understood something with painful clarity. The drift was real. The reason was not the one I gave him. Louis did not become a stranger overnight. It happened in small, boring ways. I would eat dinner with the TV on because it felt less lonely than staring at an empty chair. He would come home after midnight, smelling like cologne and fryer heat, exhausted and wired at the same time. In the morning he would talk about staffing and reservations, and I would talk about budgets and deadlines, and we would both pretend that counted as intimacy. I started waking up around 3 a.m., not because I had nightmares, but because my body knew something my mouth refused to say. I would scroll on my phone, then set it down and stare at the ceiling, telling myself I was being dramatic. When I did try to reach for him, it was always at the wrong moment. He was half asleep, half gone, and I learned to stop asking. I told myself this was marriage. This was adulthood. This was just a season. Then later that week, someone looked me in the eyes and asked a simple question that cracked that story wide open. It was Thursday afternoon in the break area outside my office, with the copier rattling and a half-cold coffee in my hand. Kevin had come in for a meeting with another department. He recognized me. First smiled like it was easy and said, "Rachel, are you okay? You look tired." I laughed the polite laugh I use at work. "I am fine. It is just a busy season." He did not buy it. He kept his voice low like he was protecting me from being overheard. "You do not have to be fine with me." That sentence landed in my chest. Not because it was romantic, but because it was attentive. He asked if I wanted to grab a coffee downstairs. I said yes too fast, then tried to soften it. Just for a minute. We talked about nothing important, and somehow it felt like oxygen. That night at home, Louis walked in, phone lighting up on the counter, and I finally said, "I miss you." He barely looked up. "Rachel." "I am right here." A notification banner slid across my lock screen in my pocket, and I already knew who it was. His "I am right here" stayed in my ears the next day, sharp and useless like a door that is technically unlocked, but still will not open. It was late afternoon at my desk, and I found myself watching my phone more than my screen. Kevin had sent a simple message. "Did you get home okay last night?" Nothing explicit. Nothing I could point to as wrong. That is what made it dangerous. I deleted typed again, then answered like a normal woman answering a normal question. Yes. Long day. My heart sped up anyway. After work, I sat in my car for a minute before driving home. I looked at our house in the distance and felt two kinds of fear. The soft fear of being lonely forever, and the hard fear of what happens if your life breaks and you still have bills to pay. I opened my banking app without thinking, then shut it, embarrassed by myself. That evening, Louis fell asleep on the couch with his work shoes still on. I should have felt tenderness. I felt distance. Another message popped up from Kevin want to grab coffee tomorrow. My thumb hovered like it was waiting for permission. My thumb was still hovering over that yes when Friday morning came around. I was downstairs at work in the lobby cafe, the kind with a pastry case and music that tries too hard. It was just after 8, and I was holding a paper cup that kept warming my palm. Kevin was already there, leaning against a table like he belonged. He smiled when he saw me, not big, just certain. "I did not want to pressure you," he said. "I just noticed you." That word noticed hit harder than it should have. I told him Louis was busy, that the restaurant was demanding that we were fine. I heard myself say fine like it was a password. Kevin stirred his coffee slowly, the spoon clicking the cup. Rachel, being lonely in your own house is not fine. I laughed to cover it, but my eyes burned anyway. He did not reach for me. He did not flirt loudly. He just kept listening like my sentences mattered. When my phone lit up with Louis's name, I did something I had never done before. I flipped it face down on the table. Kevin watched my hand, then looked back at my face. And now what he asked. That face-down phone felt heavier than the coffee cup. The following Wednesday night, I was at home in our bedroom with Louis in the bathroom brushing his teeth, and the faucet running steady. I was standing by my dresser folding a sweater I had already folded once because my hands needed something harmless. Kevin texted just 2 lines I liked talking today. "I hope you are okay." Nothing obscene, nothing dramatic. Still, my pulse jumped. Louis walked out, towel around his neck, and glanced at my screen. Not suspicious, just casual. I turned the phone a little too quick. Too smooth. "Work?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, and hated how easy it came out. He opened a drawer looking for clean socks, the wood scraping softly. "I am slammed tomorrow," he said. "We have a private party. I might not be home until late." I figured I replied like I did not care. When he climbed into bed and rolled away, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, holding my phone against my chest, so the light would not show. Kevin's next message appeared. "Want to grab dinner sometime," I typed, deleted, then typed again. And I sent the first answer that changed everything. That first yes did not feel like fireworks. It felt like a door clicking shut behind me. Friday evening I was in our bedroom getting ready, while Louis stood in the doorway loosening his tie, half watching the TV in the living room. The bedside lamp was on the soft buzz of it, filling the quiet while I swapped outfits twice like it mattered. I told myself I was just trying to look presentable. I was lying. "I'm meeting the girls from work," I said. Casual, like I had said it 100 times. Louis nodded without looking up. "Okay. Drive safe." That was it. No curiosity, no warmth, just a permission slip. In the car I sat with the engine off for a beat, staring at my wedding ring. I turned it once on my finger back and forth like it was loose. When I met Kevin for a drink, he held eye contact the whole time. He asked questions Louis stopped asking years ago. When he said, "You deserve to feel wanted," I felt my face heat, and my throat tighten at the same time. When he offered to walk me to my car, I did not say no, and I knew I was about to become someone I would not defend. The next day, the memory of Kevin's hand resting lightly at my back followed me like a scent I could not scrub off. Saturday afternoon, I was under the harsh fluorescent lights of a drugstore aisle, alone holding a basket, with boring things I actually needed. Shampoo, ibuprofen, a birthday card for a coworker. My heart was beating too fast for such a normal place. I stood in front of the family planning section longer than any adult woman should. I kept glancing at the end of the aisle like someone was going to call my name. My fingers closed around a small box and I dropped it into the basket like it was hot. At the register, the cashier did not look twice. That made it worse. I paid, grabbed the bag, and walked out with my shoulders tight like guilt had weight. In my car, I crumpled the receipt and shoved it into the cup holder. Then I pulled it back out and smoothed it flat again, angry at myself for caring. At home, I went straight to our bedroom and slid the bag into my nightstand drawer, pushing it behind old chargers and a sleep mask. The drawer did not close all the way, and I left it like that. That nightstand drawer I left half closed started to feel like it was breathing on its own. Sunday night, I was in our bedroom with Louis already asleep on his side, the bedside clock glowing, the house settling with little pops in the walls. I stood close to my dresser, one hand on the drawer, pushing it in, until the wood scraped and finally clicked shut. It sounded too loud in the dark. In the morning, I acted normal. I made coffee. I answered emails. I kissed Louis on the cheek out of habit, and he murmured, "Love you," like a reflex. Then I got in my car and sat there a full minute, hands on the steering wheel trying to slow my breathing. Kevin texted, "Did you sleep at all?" And I hated how seen that made me feel. At lunch, I walked around the block with my phone in my coat pocket, just to read his messages without feeling watched by my own office. Later that week, I searched separation process on my laptop, then erased the history like I was wiping fingerprints. When I came home, Louis was on the couch in his work clothes, dead tired TV still on. I looked at him and thought, I need a plan. Then my lock screen lit up again and my thumb moved before my conscience did. The word plan did not stay quiet for long. Later that week, I was sitting in my car outside my office after work, engine off seatbelts still on, watching people walk past like they had simple lives. Kevin called. I stared at his name until it stopped ringing. Then I called back before I could talk myself out of it. He did not waste time. "Rachel, I am not trying to blow up your life," he said, steady and calm. "But I cannot keep doing this in the shadows." I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went pale. "It is complicated," I said. "I am married. I am trying to figure things out." "I hear you," he replied, and his voice softened for half a second. "But I need to know what I mean to you. I need to know if you are actually leaving, or if I am just your escape." That word hit me like an accusation. I could not deny. I started to defend myself, then stopped. The truth was ugly. Kevin exhaled. "I am not your secret. Either you choose, or you let me go." I drove home with my chest tight. Louis's car was in the driveway. Inside, he was at the kitchen sink rinsing a plate, quiet domestic reel. I stood in the doorway, keys still in my hand, and realized the next lie would cost more than the last one. Kevin's ultimatum followed me into the weekend like a low-grade fever I could not shake. On Saturday morning, I sat alone in a medical waiting room, with my purse on my lap, scrolling without reading, listening to an old magazine rack creak every time someone touched it. The air smelled like disinfectant and winter coats. I told myself I was here to be responsible. That is what I kept repeating, because the real sentence was uglier. When the nurse called my name, I stood too fast. In the exam room, I answered questions the way I answer questions at work, steady, polite, detached. I signed forms. I nodded at information. I focused on the pen in my hand, the scratch of ink on paper. Anything except the fact that I was planning a future that did not include my husband. After I walked to my car, holding a small receipt folded tight in my fist, I did not look at it until I was alone. Then I tucked it deep into my wallet like it was a secret I could organize. That night I lay next to Louis and stared at the ceiling, rehearsing what I would say when I finally broke him. That folded receipt felt like it was burning a hole through my wallet, so I moved it where I thought it could not hurt anyone. The next day I was in our bedroom with Louis downstairs watching TV, the muffled sports commentary rising through the floor. I opened my nightstand drawer and slid the receipt behind a sleep mask and a tangle of charging cords, then pushed the drawer shut with the side of my hip, like I was closing a door on my own conscience. By Monday my body started arguing with the story I kept telling myself. I felt off in a way I could not ignore. Not dramatic pain, just enough discomfort to make me spiral. During lunch I drove to a drugstore, kept my eyes forward and grabbed a couple of test kits, without stopping to think. At the register I smiled too brightly at the cashier, like friendliness could erase what I was buying. At home I hid the bag in the same drawer, shoved it back until it hit the wood with a dull thud, and stood there with my hand resting on the handle, breathing shallow. That night Louis asked Rachel, "Are you okay?" And I said yes, even though my voice sounded like a lie that was starting to crack. The word yes I gave Louis kept echoing in my head like a cheap alibi. Later that week I was in our kitchen around midnight, standing barefoot on the cold tile with Louis a few feet from me, plating leftovers like it was a quiet ritual. The stove fan hummed. A pot lid clicked. He had taken his jacket off but still smelled like work, like smoke and soap and pressure. "I made you something," he said, sliding a plate toward me. His voice was tired, not unkind. I sat, took a bite, and my throat tightened for reasons that had nothing to do with the food. Louis leaned on the counter, watching me like he was trying to remember me. For a minute, we looked like a normal couple again, the kind people assume we are. Then he reached out and put his hand on my shoulder. Not grabbing, not demanding. Just there. My body flinched anyway. His hand pulled back like he felt the rejection. He swallowed. "Rachel, I think we should take a weekend off. Just us. No phones. No work. We can fix this." I opened my mouth and nothing came out fast enough to be honest. I carried that weekend offer upstairs, and it sat on my chest like a weight. The next night, Louis was in the shower, and I was in our bedroom moving through my usual motions with shaky hands. I hung a blouse, straightened a stack of socks, wiped a smudge off the mirror that had been there for days. Anything to avoid the real task. I looked at my reflection and tried the sentence out loud. "I think we've drifted apart." It sounded clean. It sounded mature. It sounded like something you say when you want to look reasonable. I tried again, softer. Same words, different damage. In my head I listed the safe reasons. He works too much. We do not connect. We are roommates. I kept Kevin's name out of it like I could keep the sin out by keeping the syllables out. My phone buzzed on the nightstand screen, lighting the room. I did not pick it up. I let it vibrate itself quiet. Then I picked it up anyway, and flipped it face down like I had learned. The shower turned off. Footsteps. Louis's voice drifted in casual. Do you want to watch something together? I stood there holding my breath, realizing I was about to say yes to the wrong thing. The phone I had flipped face down the night before felt like it was still in my hand, even when it wasn't. On Sunday night, I stood in our kitchen with Louis a few feet away, the kettle starting to hiss and the refrigerator humming like it had opinions. He was in sweatpants, still half in work mode, tapping through emails with his thumb, while a dish towel hung over his shoulder. I poured hot water into 2 mugs, because that is what I do when I am scared. I make things look normal, Louis the First said, and my voice surprised me because it didn't shake. I think we should separate. He stopped moving, not slowly, instantly. The spoon in his mug clinked once, and then nothing. He looked at me like he was waiting for the punchline. A separation. He repeated, quieter. "Why we drifted," I said, using the line I practiced. "We are not close anymore." His jaw tightened. He stared at the counter, then back at me. Is there someone else? My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I held the mug so hard it hurt my fingers. "No," I said, too fast, too clean. Louis nodded once like he had just made a decision for survival. "Okay," he said. "Then we do this the right way." And he reached for his phone. The word right way followed us like a shadow. 3 days later, we sat across from each other in a lawyer's office that smelled like printer toner and peppermint. There was a glass bowl of mints on the table, and neither of us touched them. Louis sat straight, hands folded, his wedding ring catching the light every time he shifted. I kept my purse on my lap like it was armor. The lawyer explained the basics. No kids made it simpler. That word simpler felt like a slap. We agreed to split everything 50-50. I said I wanted to keep the house and refinance it in my name. Louis asked one practical question about timing, then went quiet again. When the papers slid toward me, my pen felt heavy. I signed anyway. The ink looked too dark, too permanent. Louis signed without looking at me, then pushed his copy back like he was done touching the past. In the parking lot, he said, "We will keep this civil." I nodded, because I could not ask for mercy. That night I put the signed folder in my nightstand drawer, right on top of the things I should have thrown away. That nightstand drawer became the place I shoved anything I did not want to face. The next day after work, I was in our bedroom folding a sweater I was not going to wear with Louis downstairs. On a call, his voice low through the floor vent. I slid the signed separation folder into the drawer, and it bumped against the test kits and that folded receipt. Paper on paper. Secrets stacked neatly like that made them safer. A text from Kevin came in. "Can you meet for a quick drink?" I stared at the screen, then looked at the bed Louis and I still shared, and felt my chest tighten in 2 directions at once. I texted back, "Yes." I rushed. I left the drawer a hair open. Not enough to notice unless you were looking, but enough to feel like a warning. On my way out, I told Louis I am meeting a coworker. I will be back later. He did not ask which one. He just nodded and kept talking into his headset. When I came home close to midnight, the house was dark except for the soft glow of our bedroom clock. Louis was awake. I could hear him moving upstairs, and I knew he was going to open something I should have closed for good. The sound of a drawer sliding shut is quiet until you are afraid of it. Thursday morning, I walked into our bedroom and saw Louis standing by my nightstand, shoulders squared, one hand resting on the open drawer, like he had been holding himself back from slamming it. The blinds were half-open stripes of light cutting across the dresser. The only other sound was the ceiling fan ticking. He did not look surprised. He looked finished. On the dresser, he had lined things up in a straight row. Condoms, a UTI test, a pregnancy test, a receipt for a birth control implant. He had placed each item carefully, like evidence like he needed his hands to stay busy, so his face would not fall apart. I froze in the doorway. My mouth opened, but nothing came out that was not a lie. Louis finally looked at me. His eyes were steady, almost calm. So that is why he said. Not loud, not cruel. Just flat. I took a step forward. He lifted his hand palm out, stopping me in place without touching me. Then he nodded once toward my phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up, and his eyes dropped to the name. That glowing screen felt louder than the ceiling fan. Thursday morning we were still in our bedroom, just the two of us standing on opposite sides of the dresser, like strangers sharing a crime scene. Louis had his palm half raised, stopping me from getting closer, and my phone sat there bright and shameless on the nightstand. I reached for it on instinct. Louis moved faster. He did not grab my wrist. He simply slid the phone toward himself with 2 fingers, turned it slightly and looked. Kevin. Nothing else mattered. Not the paperwork. Not the careful little line of items on the dresser. Just that name clean on a black screen. Louis's throat worked like he was swallowing something sharp. "So you lied to my face," he said, steady and quiet, when I asked if there was someone else. I tried to speak. My voice got stuck behind my teeth. "Louis, I can explain," I said, and even I hated how weak it sounded. He tapped accept before I could stop him. He put the phone on speaker and set it down between us like a judge placing evidence. Kevin's voice filled our bedroom. "Hey, Rachel." "Are you alone?" Kevin's question hung in the air like smoke. I stood there frozen, hearing my own breathing and the soft crackle of the speaker. Louis did not look at the phone. He looked at me, and his eyes were so calm, it scared me more than anger ever could. "No," Louis said into the room, voice controlled. "She is not alone." There was a pause on the line. A tiny one, but it said everything. Kevin tried to recover. "I am sorry. I did not know who this was," he said, and it sounded like a lie he had practiced. Louis let out a short, humorless breath. "You know exactly who I am," he replied. "We have met." My stomach dropped. I wanted to snatch the phone and end it, but my feet would not move. Kevin's voice went quieter. "Louis, I never meant to disrespect you," he said. Louis nodded once more to himself, then to anyone else. "Do you remember that ski trip a couple seasons ago?" he asked. "The one where you shook my hand and smiled at my wife?" Kevin did not answer fast enough. Louis turned his head slightly toward me. "Rachel," he said, "how long has this been going on?" Kevin's silence on the line was the loudest thing in the room. That same Thursday morning we were still in our bedroom, Louis standing by the dresser, me pinned in place by my own shame, the phone on speaker between us, and the ceiling fan clicking like a metronome. "How long?" Louis asked again, slower this time. I looked at the carpet. I counted a breath. I tried to choose a number that would hurt less, like there was such a thing. "It has been a while," I said. Louis nodded once, almost polite. He reached over, tapped the screen, and ended the call. No dramatic goodbye. Just done. He picked up the condoms from the dresser, held them for a second, like they were something sticky, then set them back down. He turned to me. "You asked for a separation, and still looked me in the eye and lied," he said. "Do not talk about being civil. You already decided what that word means." Then he opened his dresser drawer, pulled out a spare pillow, and walked out of our bedroom without slamming a door. The hallway light clicked on. His footsteps moved away. I stood there staring at the empty space he left, realizing the house had not changed, but my place in it had. The quiet he left behind settled into every room like cold dust. Later that week, I was in the kitchen early, holding a mug I forgot to drink, while Louis stood across from me, scrolling on his phone, not looking up. The only sound was the coffee maker dripping, and the soft tear of tape as he sealed a cardboard box on the counter. "What are you doing?" I asked, even though the answer was obvious. "I am separating my life," he said. His voice was flat, not cruel. "You started this. I am finishing it." He carried the box to the garage and came back for another. He moved with the same focus he probably uses at the restaurant during a rush. No wasted motion, no speech, just action. I saw a new folder on the table with bank paperwork. I did not reach for it. I could feel the boundary without touching it. He slid a key across the counter. "Storage unit," he said. "My things are going there." It should have made me angry. Instead, I felt small, like I had been demoted from partner to problem. That night I tried to catch him in the hallway. "Louis, please, can we talk?" I said. He did not stop walking. He just said, "There is nothing to talk about." And I realized the next pain was going to be quieter and worse. The cardboard boxes in the garage kept multiplying, and the sound of packing tape ripping started to feel like a countdown. Later that night, I was in the hallway outside the guest room. The house dimmed the dryer, thumping softly in the laundry room. Louis was a few feet in front of me with a folded shirt in his hands, moving like I was furniture he had to walk around. "Louis, please," I said. "I know I messed up, but we cannot just live like strangers." He did not raise his voice. He did not even turn all the way around. He just set the shirt on top of a box slow and careful, like he didn't trust his hands. "There is nothing to talk about," he said. "I am sorry I pushed out. I am trying to be honest now." That finally made him look at me. His eyes were tired, not furious. He shook his head once. "It is the lies that hurt the most," he said. "Not the ending. The lies." Then he reached past me for the doorknob, and when my body instinctively stayed in his way, he paused. He did not touch me. He just waited until I stepped back. The door clicked shut, and I stood there holding my breath, like the house had stolen my air. That door clicking shut followed me into the next afternoon. I was pulling into our driveway after work, sitting in my car, with the radio off, watching a neighbor water their lawn, like nothing in the world had changed. When they waved, I waved back, and it felt fake coming from my own arm. Inside, Louis was gone. Not out of the marriage, not yet. Just out of the room. His shoes were lined up neatly by the door, like he was practicing leaving without making a mess. My phone lit with Kevin's name, and for a second my body still reacted like it used to. Then I read the message. "Are you okay? No plan, no warmth, no fight. Just a checkbox text." I stared at it and felt something sour rise in my throat. Kevin was brave when it was secret and easy. Now that it was real, he sounded like a man backing away from smoke. I walked through the house, touching small things for no reason. The kitchen counter, the back of a chair, the framed photo we never updated. Outside, another neighbor laughed with someone on their porch, and I flinched like they were laughing at me. By night, I opened my laptop and typed a question I never thought I would need to ask, and the search results made my hands go cold. The search results I read the night before sat behind my eyes like bright, ugly headlights. The next morning I was in my kitchen before sunrise, alone staring at my open laptop, while the coffee maker clicked and sputtered beside me. My hands were wrapped around a mug I barely tasted, and my finger hovered over my health insurance app like it weighed 100 pounds. I booked the first appointment I could get. Not for closure. For survival. In the waiting room, I kept my coat on like armor. I filled out forms with a pen that kept slipping in my sweaty hand. When the nurse called my name, I stood up too fast and felt the room tilt for a second. I answered questions in a steady voice that did not match my body. I signed. I nodded. I tried not to think about how quickly a private mistake turns into a medical problem you have to face in fluorescent light. Afterward, I sat in my car with the paperwork on the passenger seat, gripping the steering wheel until my fingers went numb. I called a therapist from the parking lot and left a message that came out smaller than I expected. Kevin called. I watched it ring until it stopped, because I needed to know what silence felt like on purpose. By the end of that week, I was sitting in a small office, with a lawyer I had never wanted to meet, my purse on my lap, the air conditioner humming too loud. I told myself I was there to understand my options. The truth was, I wanted someone to tell me I could rewind time and make my choices cost less. The lawyer skimmed the separation paperwork we had already signed and spoke in a calm, almost bored tone. It was not like the movies. There was no dramatic punishment, no clean revenge, just timelines, signatures, and what a judge would and would not care about. I asked, if I take this to court, does that change anything? He looked at me for a beat and said, it changes how long you stay stuck and how much you pay to stay there. That sentence landed cold. I thought about Lewis in the garage, taping boxes shut with quiet hands. I thought about the neighbor's wave. I thought about my own body in that waiting room. When I walked out, my phone felt heavier in my coat pocket. I did not call Kevin. I called the mortgage broker instead, because the most brutal part of growing up is learning that consequences often show up as paperwork, and the next item on that paperwork had a date on it. The appraisal. The appraisal date sat on my calendar like a bruise, and when it finally arrived, it did not feel like business. It felt like a stranger pricing my life. That afternoon, we were in our house with the appraiser in the hallway, Louis a few steps behind me, and my hands clasped tight at my waist as the measuring tape snapped open with a sharp metallic sound. The appraiser moved room to room, neutral and efficient. He opened closet doors like he owned them. He peeked into cabinets. He took photos of our kitchen counters, our bathroom tile, the bedroom where the nightstand drawer used to hide my mess. Each camera click made my stomach tighten. Any major updates? He asked eyes on his clipboard. Louis answered before I could breathe. No major updates. We are separating. The appraiser paused for half a beat, then nodded like he heard it every day. He wrote something down and kept walking. I stood there smiling too politely the way women do when they are trying not to break in front of a stranger. Lewis did not look at me once. He just followed the appraiser calm as a professional, like he was managing another clean exit. When the front door finally closed behind the appraiser, Louis picked up his keys. Once the number comes back, he said, this moves fast. Once the number came back, everything turned into timing. Another night, I was in the garage with Lewis, the overhead light buzzing, the cold air smelling like cardboard and old paint. His boxes were stacked in clean towers. Mine were not. I watched him lift the last one into the trunk like it was just another shift change. I will send you the confirmation when the funds clear, he said, voice steady. After that, I am out. I nodded, like I understood, even though my throat felt tight. I stepped closer without thinking. Lewis. I never wanted to hurt you like this, I said. I thought I was fixing something that was already broken. He shut the trunk and the sound landed hard. He finally looked at me. His eyes were not angry. They were tired, like he had already mourned me. You did not just leave, he said. You replaced me while I was still here. I reached for his arm, a reflex, a plea. He did not yank away. He simply took my hand off him and set it back at my side, gentle and final. Then he pulled his wedding ring off, placed it on the workbench, and slid the house key next to it. He picked up his duffel bag, walked past me, and I did not follow. That ring and that key sitting on the workbench did not look dramatic. They looked ordinary, which is what made them brutal. I used to think endings needed shouting to feel real. I was wrong. Sometimes the loudest thing is a quiet man choosing peace and walking away. Here is what I know now. Loneliness does not excuse betrayal, but it does explain how people start starving in the same house they sleep in. If you keep saying I am fine long enough, your life will eventually believe you and move on without you. If you want love, you have to ask for it before you start shopping for it in someone else's attention. I also learned that dignity is not something you keep by looking calm. You keep it by telling the truth early, even when it is messy, even when it makes you the bad guy for a minute. The law can split money cleanly. It cannot split shame, or rebuild trust, or give you your old self back. I did not lose my marriage in one day. I lost it in 1,000 small choices, and then I watched the bill come due. All right. Let May be painfully clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern, and it showed up fast. A stranger asked you something stupid at a bar, you said no, and Mark turned you from wife to suspect. That's red flag number 1, suspicion, without proof. Then he started the classic toxic combo, moving the goalpost, demanding the truth after you already gave it, and treating your calm as evidence. That's not concern. That's control wearing a suit. And when someone blocks the exit, when your I need air becomes why are you running, that's not love. That's a power test. The moment he rewrote the story, you pushed me, you escalated. That's gaslighting 1. Oh, 1. Not loud, not messy, just cold, tidy cruelty. So here's your takeaway straight up. Your no is a full sentence. You don't audition for basic respect. You don't negotiate reality with someone who benefits from you doubting yourself. If you're hearing this and your stomach drops, trust that. Red flags don't get greener with time. To the villain of this story, karma doesn't need your permission. It just keeps receipts. And to you, sweetheart, this debt, May clears it. But remember, these eyes are always watching. Don't let your name end up on May's blacklist next episode. Hit subscribe, because around here, justice doesn't show up late. It shows up ready. A final note from the library. While these stories find their roots in the halls of Reddit, they are artistically reimagined to speak to the heart. Any likeness to reality is mere coincidence. The emotions, however, are very real. Walk with empathy, and let justice lead the way. Thank you for watching.